Are there any countries in the world that are not in debt? Yes, there is. Singapore and several other, very small, nations are debt-free. About 10 years ago, I met with 5 Singapore CFPs. There are only about 1,200 CFPs in that great nation. We met over lunch at a meeting of the Million Dollar Roundtable, MDRT, the top life insurance agents in the world. During our discussion I asked, what do you think about America's debt? By that I mean our national debt and our consumer debt? And what can you tell me about Singapore in terms of those two debt categories? They told me Singapore as a nation has no debt and has to look outside of their country to find opportunities in which to invest. They also mentioned that their citizens. Their younger citizens. Might have debt, but it's not to buy homes or cars. It's strictly to fund education. And even then they pay it off as quickly as possible. Citizens simply grow up thinking that way, sensible behavior passed down from one generation to the next. Mentioning my admiration, I pressed them for comments on America's debt, both national and consumer. When the CFPs responded, they expressed great admiration for our creativity, especially in the business world. One said that such business debt might be okay, but it's wise to quickly pay it off. I agreed and pressed for their comments about America's consumer debt, homes, cars, vacations, gifts, emergencies, credit cards, etc. They all agreed that such debt is not good. It's not good, they said, because the habit of carrying personal, consumer, debt suppresses the inclination to be creative. But when saying that, they, again, expressed great admiration for American ingenuity, which they said is known and admired throughout the world. The major industrialized nations are buried in debt which is beyond dangerous. It's so destructive that a cascading series of adverse events could very easily cause a scenario as bad as the 1930s, if not worse. So do yourself a big favor and completely eliminate your debt. Start doing that now. At age 78, my economic perspective goes way back to FDR, HST, Ike, JFK, LBJ, etc. LBJ was not a good man, or president. If you disagree, read the New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ by Roger Stone. As I think back on that sad day for America, I vividly recall thinking, LBJ did it. Published in 2013, which was 50 years after JFK's terrible death in 1963, I now know that my gut was right about LBJ. The Man Who Killed Kennedy is important reading for any citizen courageous enough to reflect upon the economic dangers we face. By that I mean someone may or may not like Trump, but he's done tremendous things for the American economy. And there are lunatics out there. And so I pray, God, please bless the Secret Service. Keep our president safe. There are countries that run a foreign trade surplus and countries that run a foreign trade deficit. Running a trade deficit isn't much of an issue for monetarily sovereign countries, and it's impossible for all countries to run a trade surplus at the same time. And there are countries that never borrow in a foreign currency and countries that do borrow in a foreign currency. Borrowing in a foreign currency is risky, as that means a country runs the risk of defaulting on their foreign loans. And, all money is debt by virtue of double-entry accounting. So for instance, the American dollar is both a government liability, debt, and private asset. What does the government owe American citizens? At minimum, it owes tax relief come tax time when folks pay their tax liability. It could be argued governments owe more than this. Governments demand the return of its IOUs come tax time. Things like public goods and good government. But I prefer to think that governments owe its citizens public goods and good governance because the government has the power to issue the national currency that we use to pay tax to begin with. And that governments have the duty to fund broad public purpose when they issue the national currency and practice good governance in the administration of the public goods so provided.